United States citizens are fortunate enough to have the right to decide our nation's future. And in the United States, a felony conviction does not take away that citizenship, but it does take away that right. Felony disenfranchisement is the restriction or elimination of voting rights, Second Amendment rights, and other benefits of citizenship for convicted felons. Once released from jail, ex-felons, a population disproportionately made up of POC, typically Black Americans, lose enfranchisement indefinitely. In the United States, felony disenfranchisement violates civil rights by limiting felons' participation in our country's democratic processes, undemocratic and unethical, both because they are U.S. citizens and they count towards population totals that establish district and state representation. Felony disenfranchisement originated in North America from English colonial common law practices of civil death, retracting voting rights for certain glaring moral offenses. After the American Revolution, however, states began disenfranchising all felons. Post-Civil War, in response to the brief period of African American prosperity known as the Reconstruction, many state governments turned to disenfranchisement to benefit their racist interests. Alabama was flagrant in suppressing the black vote, with the author of their disenfranchisement provision stating, quote, "The crime of wife-beating alone would disqualify 60% of the Negroes," unquote. South Carolina began disenfranchising people who committed what they referred to as black crimes, quote, "thievery, adultery, arson, wife-beating, housebreaking, and attempted rape, but not murder or fighting," unquote. These racist implementations led to the unbalanced elimination of voting rights for Black Americans. In North Carolina, the racist motives behind felony disenfranchisement could not be more clear. Before the 1860s, NC disenfranchised only those convicted of what were termed infamous crimes. After the Civil War and Reconstruction, an extensive movement organized by former rebels convicted Black North Carolinians of infamous crimes with, quote, "the express goal of preventing African Americans from being able to vote," unquote. Further, North Carolina added felony disenfranchisement to the state constitution in 1877 with this sole objective, quote, "neutering the gains of the radical Reconstruction, particularly the advances of the 15th Amendment, which gave Black men the right to vote," unquote. The Felony Disenfranchisement Committee chairman, John Henderson, was an enthusiastic Jim Crow supporter, once managing the lynchings of 3 Black Americans. The fact that this committee's head was so unapologetically racist obligates North Carolina to take another look at the roots and ethics of such a practice. Detrimental repercussions from these centuries-old laws continue to contribute to the racially discriminatory incarceration system that we see today. Black people have a 5-fold chance of incarceration compared to their white peers, with significantly longer sentences. Black men are sentenced to 20% longer sentences than white men for the same crimes, and they are 65% more likely to be charged with mandatory minimum sentences than their white counterparts committing the same offense. Imprisonment funnels directly into disenfranchisement, with an average of 1 in 16 African Americans aged 18 or older stripped of their rights. This is 3.7 times greater than the rate of non-African Americans. Racial discrepancies in the U.S. prison and disenfranchisement systems have prompted much discussion on whether these policies and practices honor the foundations of this country. The constitutional debate surrounding felony disenfranchisement is passionate on both sides. While undoubtedly undemocratic, does it violate the U.S. Constitution? The 14th Amendment grants citizenship to every person born or naturalized in the U.S. and states, quote, "No state shall make or enforce any law which shall deny to any person equal protection of the laws," unquote. Every citizen, regardless of any distinguishing factor, must be treated equally under law, logically including the right to vote, something that does not occur under current policy. Many opponents to enfranchising ex-felons cite Section 2 of the 14th Amendment for constitutional justification. Section 2 states government cannot deny or abridge any person's voting rights except in the case of, quote, "participation in rebellion or other crime," unquote. This is a compelling argument only if we disregard the rest of Section 2, as it continuously refers to the United States' voting body as, quote, "male citizens 21 years of age," unquote. The United States no longer restricts enfranchisement to white 21-year-old men, nor do we adhere to the moral ideologies of the 1860s. Therefore, the U.S. should not continue to uphold this antiquated section of the 14th Amendment. Voting disqualification should be abolished, for it goes against strides this nation has made in regards to civil rights. The United States prides itself on civil rights advocacy, citizens' rights to political and social freedom and equality. However, the U.S. falls short, considering millions of American citizens are forbidden to vote even though they pay taxes while imprisoned. The cry for no taxation without representation rings true in 2021 as in 1773, and while felons are counted in population totals for their jail's district, resulting in more representation for the surrounding community, they have no say in who that representation is. The U.S. cannot claim to support civil rights if the very policies it has in place effectively destroy them. Nevertheless, the future of our democracy is not altogether bleak. There is hope. A right to vote amendment to the U.S. Constitution. An RTV amendment would protect the right to vote for everyone, focusing on 4 areas. 1. Ending loophole discrimination in the voting process in regards to voter suppression, misinformation, and severe partisan gerrymandering. 2. Allowing ex-felons to vote immediately upon release. 3. Allowing voters in D.C. to vote for federal representation. And 4. Allowing residents of Puerto Rico to vote for federal representation. The United States has much work to do to ensure equity in our nation. Millions of engaged, tax-paying, census-counting American citizens are outlawed from voting. Felony disenfranchisement contradicts everything our nation claims to honor. Fair, free elections, political and social equality, strong morals, and progressive ideologies. Stripping ex-felons of their right to vote is undemocratic, unethical, and un-American. We must work to establish a future where everyone is guaranteed equal protection under the law. Thank you.